Assalamu alaikum YouTube, what's going on? Oni here. I haven't posted in a long time, so I just thought I would make a quick video about my initial impressions about Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Now I know that is a pretty old game as of yet, relatively speaking, but as always I'm late to the party, so I just thought I would just put my thoughts out there because I really enjoyed this game, and this reboot series of Tomb Raider are a bunch of pretty good games, I have to say. Now this is going to be a really unscripted video. I just wanted to put my thoughts out there because, like I said, it's a pretty old game relatively speaking, and to review it and make something like that is like kind of stupid at this point. Maybe when it becomes a retro title we'll do something like that, but you know what, I just thought this marks an end of an era, Trinity trilogy of Shadow of Tomb Raider games. So yeah, I just thought maybe it's time that I put this behind me and just get my thoughts out there. Now like I said, this is unscripted, so if I do stutter or mess up my stuff what I'm trying to speak like I just did right now, please forgive me because obviously English isn't my first language. And if you like supporting the channel, I would really appreciate if you do subscribe and turn on those notifications. Now first let's just talk about the plot of the game. Now the plot follows the story of Lara's fight against Trinity, and it continues right after where the second game left off, and I have to say the overall story of this game is pretty weak in my opinion. Now don't get me wrong, there are stuff of this game that I really enjoyed, and I really wish that they would have done something like this in previous games, because that whole Paititi thing, that ancient civilization still alive and well in this age, and then those mythical Ishal things, you know, those zombie Mayan things and stuff, the whole mystical element of this game was absolutely amazing, and I loved every moment of it, discovering new tombs, new stuff to talk about, and the information they give you about relics and the stuff you find. That was really awesome. But when it comes to the overall plot of Trinity, I think this game had a really weak story and a weaker climax at the end of the game. Now if you all remember, when Tomb Raider got rebooted all those years ago, we didn't get a full fleshed out view of what Trinity actually was in the first game, but we actually got a lot of it in the second game, and it was really interesting to see this prophet character, to know more about Trinity and what's been going on around the world. That was pretty amazing to find out that this guy has been alive for thousands of years. He's been fighting against Trinity, running from them, everything. But you know what, let's just admit it, the whole plot of Trinity was never too much engaging from the start. It was never this really interesting thing to begin with, at least for me. You can have your own opinion obviously, but in my opinion it was never too interesting to begin with. Now I'm really glad that Shadow of the Tomb Raider has come out with the last bit of the Trinity plot. It's over. Lara kills the boss of Trinity, and supposedly the whole organization is going to be wiped out now. But that is the huge plot point that I'm talking about. Trinity has been around for thousands of years. In the previous game, that prophet is at least as old as Jesus or something like that in the game's story. So Trinity has been around for thousands of years. And just killing off the main guy in this game is supposed to break down the whole organization, a world-spanning organization that has been around for thousands of years. I just don't think that's gonna work. The overall plot of Shadow of the Tomb Raider was quite weak, but you know what, Eidos really knocked it out of the park with the small elements, that other things that they added into the game. You know, the backstory of that whole Spanish conquistador and stuff like that. That was really amazing. Now as far as Lara Croft herself is concerned, I think they did a really good job in bringing an end to her whole character arc that started way back in Tomb Raider the reboot that came out a couple of years ago. Now could they have done it a bit better? I really think so, because I don't know what it is, maybe it's in the voice acting or something like that, but I have to say in this game, out of the two previous titles, I have to say Lara appears to be the weakest character wise. I just don't know what's with her. I think it's the voice acting, but in every dialogue, in every sentence she speaks, she just feels like she's on the verge of tears. You know what I'm trying to say? She has this whole breathlessness about her dialogue and stuff like that. Like I said, it's done pretty good. It could have been done better. Now we finally see her, Lara, go through this final character arc for her character in this game, as she turns from this kind of naive girl at the start of the game, the same girl that we knew in the previous game. She kind of turns from that to a much more darker role, bordering on the like sadistic and murderous kind of thing in the game, and then she finally finds her redemption at the end of the game when she kills the final boss, and that's it. Now I have to say that the character was done best in the first Tomb Raider game, because that was a like really self-contained story as far as Lara Croft was concerned for her character, because she starts out this game, the first game, with this like really naive, innocent girl, college girl who's on her first expedition, and then she has to like go through all of that hell to turn out to be this really strong and emotionally powerful character, actually ending up saving all of her friends, surviving friends from the first game, including Sam. Now speaking of Sam, I think the story writers, the developers, the makers of this game made a huge mistake by not implementing Sam in any way, in any significant way in this game, because this game was supposed to be the last story arc of Lara Croft that started with the first game in this reboot series, and I think it was the best time to come full circle, because you know what? After the first game, we never really got a like confirmation of whatever happened to Sam. There is some comics or books in which she is mentioned. She is actually an integral part of Lara's story after the first game. I think there are a couple of comics in which she is like mentioned and she actually plays a part, but after that it was nothing. And there is a dialogue in this that Lara says that when I lost contact with her best friend Sam, Jonah has always been there with her. So I think this was a perfect opportunity to bring that conflict, that internal conflict Lara has with like losing people in her life, to like full circle here with her also finding redemption with her friend Sam, and she coming back into her life. And maybe they could have like made Sam a really important character to join Lara in her other adventures that will eventually come out when a new Tomb Raider game is announced that doesn't have to do anything with this whole Trinity plot. Now speaking of best friends of Lara, Jonah as a character is someone that I don't particularly dislike, but I do think that he has been overused. Now in the first game there were like couple of characters, it was Jonah and some other people, so the time was divided among all of them. But in the second game it's Jonah and Lara Croft, and that was okay. In the second game Jonah was like okay, he is a like companion with her, okay sure. But in the third game, like I just said, they should have implemented Sam. And I'm not gonna say that should have implemented a new character. They tried to do that with Abby, but she was just a like generic character. They should have like implemented Sam in the third game along with Jonah, because Jonah as a character I don't think is like too much interesting to me, and he was already a pivotal part in the second game. He was along with Lara in the second game, and he was also along for the ride in this game, and it just doesn't feel like it became boring is what I'm trying to say really fast. And he doesn't like bring too much to the table at all. I know he is supposed to be this emotional anchor to Lara whenever she has it over her head, but it just didn't work in this third game. It was okay in the second game, but yeah, Jonah as a character in the third game is, to me, feels like he was overused, and they should have like implemented Sam and brought her back into Lara's life to have that whole character conflict arc come full circle and she find redemption with her best friend, the friend she actually started this whole journey with. To them not even mention Sam in any like significant way is kind of like disrespectful towards that character, and I really think that they shouldn't have done that. At least put her in the ending, that's what I'm trying to say. If Lara has finally found redemption and her story arc is complete when it comes to Trinity, I think a final scene with her sitting with Sam and like reminiscing or like having a sorry moment or something like that would have been really awesome to see, and Sam could have been implemented as a like brand new supportive character in future Tomb Raider games. Now again, speaking of Sam and having her implemented in the game, there is something that I also want to mention that they should have gone with in this new Tomb Raider game, because this is supposed to be the end of the trilogy and they should have gone all out. First, let me just get the gameplay out of the way. The gameplay is just 100% a copy-paste same from the previous game. There is only like 1 or 2 new mechanics in this game, and those mechanics don't come into play all that often anyway. So yeah, the gameplay is very similar to the previous Tomb Raider game, and that's just about it. There were a lot of complaints from fans that the gameplay feels boring and repetitive, and I have to agree on that. Even though I really enjoyed climbing like old tombs and stuff like that, there's so much you can do before it gets boring. That's just what I'm trying to say. I know it doesn't have to innovate at every turn of the event, but you have to like innovate enough from the previous game to keep it fresh. Now, speaking of implementing actual changes, I think a slight tonal change in this final game wouldn't have been like too bad of a decision, and nobody would have given too much of a grief to Square Enix or the developers if they had made slight changes to the overall tone of this final game. Now, what I'm trying to say right now is that it wouldn't have hurt them to take a more fantastical or fantasy or mythical route when it came to this final game, because this is obviously the last game in the trilogy and they wanted to make it like most climatic as they could, even though they kind of failed on it. Now let me illustrate my point, what I'm trying to say. When it comes to this new trilogy, we have to admit that the tone of this entire trilogy has been like too much realistic and serious when it comes to games. Now, games are a medium in which you can practically do anything that you want. And I don't know why more developers don't take that freedom when it comes to designing games. Like, they just take that for granted and give us like more realistic experience. Like why would I want to play a game that has a like really realistic scenario presented before me, and the limitations of my characters are also constrained in the halls of realism. I don't know what I just said, but it sounded like really smart. What I'm trying to say is game designers have all the freedom in the world to like implement out of the ordinary badass things that they can have your characters do or the situations our characters can be in, but they just chose to go the like really realistic route. Why? That's like such a big wasted opportunity, and it is nowhere apparent more in this game out of all of the trilogy. Now when it comes to Tomb Raider games, if you all remember the first Tomb Raider games that came out all those years ago, there was always this really big element of the mystical and the fantastical when it came to the overall locations and the creatures that we found in those games. Take Lara Croft Go for an example. This is my favorite game on mobile of all time. In this game, Lara Croft is all on an adventure to find an artifact called the Atlas of the Beyond. Now that is a like pretty generic and straightforward plot, and it's a puzzle game, but you know what? The main center point of this whole story is not Lara or that artifact. It's actually just giant freaking snake. This is the queen of Venom, and she has been like kind of guarding these ancient ruins for like how many years. It's obviously never told who this is and what it is. It's all left up to the imagination, but you know what? We come across similar small snakes in this game, and she is like a really big version of these smaller snakes, so it's obvious that she's been around for a long time. Maybe from the time when the first people who built these ruins were like here. So it like really adds to that whole mystical element when it comes to playing that game, to come across this snake and you actually have to like run from it and stuff like that. Now in this trilogy of games, there were a lot of places where they could have implemented some really awesome looking ancient giant creatures, but they didn't, for some odd reasons. In the previous Tomb Raider games, we came across that huge skeleton thingy in the first game, then there were like sea serpents in other games, then there was this giant fish creature in other games. What I'm trying to say is Lara Croft has always had this one giant big creature in most of her games, and in this trilogy that whole mystical element was just thrown out and replaced with this realistic vibe. Now there were a lot of locations when I was playing in this game, really hauntingly beautiful locations, where I just thought, man, if they just had a like giant snake over here stalking us, we have to get across a like really deep pool of water, and there's a like giant eel or something like that in there, and we have to get across it. And they could have like mixed it up with the overall story of the Mayan stuff. That would have been amazing. It would have been so awesome, and I'm really sad that they actually ended up missing this whole plot point completely. Like, they're coming out with these DLCs, they're filled with puzzles and stuff, and they're still not like implementing stuff like that. Having a giant creature in this mystical ancient element doesn't like do any harm to your overall game. It only adds to it. So yeah, a really big opportunity missed in my opinion. Now the very last thing that I want to mention about this whole trilogy, and not this one game in particular, is that I think it is very high time and long overdue that Square Enix finally embraces Lara Croft for what she actually is, the Tomb Raider. It's about time that we actually get the Tomb Raider back from when it was first came out all those years ago, because that was a really good character. And you know what? This whole trilogy feels like one big character arc for Lara. It worked in the first game, it was kind of okay in the second game, but by the third game, she's still on this character arc of like redemption and something. So I don't think that was like a really smart move on their part to expand her character arc over 3 stories extensively, but okay, you had to do with that Trinity plot, okay, it's done. Moving forward, I really hope that they don't like shove this whole overarching plot in our face with something new threat or something like that, because you know what? Lara Croft Tomb Raider, the previous games have always been about this really attractive, rich archaeologist who just happens to find herself in like really pinchy situations and goes to tombs who have been like ruined and forgotten for centuries, and she stumbles in them and finds treasures and probably just goes out and like sells them because she's like super rich. And you know what? Simply by the name Tomb Raider, that's basically a really good word, a really respectable way of saying, or a really cool way of saying grave robber. Tomb Raider is basically a grave robber in essence. So that isn't exactly a really respectable thing that Lara Croft has always been doing, in my opinion. So I think it is about time that we get off this really high horse that Square Enix has put on with this trilogy about saving the world and stuff like that. No. Embrace what Tomb Raider is actually about, what it is actually about. Don't be afraid of like giving her the iconic pistols in the next game, or her like more fan favorite costumes from the previous games. I think Square Enix like took Lara Croft so far. I defended the first game, I remember when it first came out, but by this third game I have to admit that they have taken Lara Croft so far out from what she was in back then, that I think this is a completely new character. Well, I think that was kind of the point because it was a reboot, but I think it is about time that she makes her like triumphant return to the roots of the Tomb Raider games of old. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Now I know, hearing all of the stuff that I've just said for this video, I kinda get the feeling that most of what I said is kind of like a negative for this game, but believe me when I say that I had a lot of fun playing this game. It was like really beautiful to look at, it was really like relaxing, that the locations, the puzzles, the tombs are the best part of this game, and everything else was pretty amazing. The gameplay kinda got repetitive at the end of the game, or in the middle. I have to be honest here, in the middle of the game I was kinda like bored with the gameplay, but the game just kept surprising me with these tombs and stuff to do when it came to the overall world and the town of Paititi and Kuala Yaku and stuff like that. So yeah, I know, like I just said, it might sound that this was kind of a negative video, but it is really not. I really enjoyed this game and I highly recommend anybody who's like looking for a really good adventure game that they can play through and have a like really good time. Don't like focus too much on the story because like I said, it was quite weak, but the other stuff to do in this game, the things you discover, those were like pretty awesome. I'm really looking forward to see what Square Enix does with Lara Croft going forward, because this is the end of an era. It's the end of the original reboot trilogy and it's only like going forward from here. Really hope they come across like some really cool stories going down further when it comes to Lara Croft, and I'm really glad that they have put this whole Trinity business behind them, because to tell you the truth, it was kind of like hurting the game at this point. So yeah, really glad that we're all done with that. Lara has gone through her like character development arc, her initial character development arc, and she is now finally ready to be the Tomb Raider she's always destined to be. So I highly recommend go out and play this game. It is on sale and it's quite cheap right now. You will be missing out a lot if you don't play this game. And that's pretty much it. That's all I have to say for this game right now. I am thinking of making a like proper video about explaining that whole mythical element that is present in previous Tomb Raider games and not in this new trilogy, but maybe that is a story for another time. Tell me in the comments down below what you all thought of this game if you have played it, and if you haven't played it, I do recommend that you go check this game out. Now if you like this video, please do consider leaving a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, there's a thumbs down button for you. And if you like supporting the channel, please do consider subscribing. I am trying to reach 1000 subs eventually, so you can help me in reaching my goal. With that said, thank you very much for watching. I am Oni. I will see you in the next one. Peace out.